Hello and welcome to day 13 of Business English 1. Today I want to spend some time talking about visual aids because obviously you have your Boom Diata presentations coming up very soon. You have been working on your lyrics for those. And just a reminder, your lyrics, your words to your verses are due this Thursday. Okay. You can send those to me on Cow. And I just need one person from each group to send those. I don't need every individual to send those. Make sure that you have the correct number of syllables in each verse and that you have the correct rhyming pattern. The second and fourth lines in each verse must rhyme. They have to have the same ending sound. You have to have at least 3 verses. Okay. Some groups were talking about doing maybe 4 verses if they have 4 people in the group. That's fine. You don't have to do that, but you can. But every group, even if you only have 2 people, every group has to have at least 3 verses. Okay? So keep that in mind. Also, don't forget to do the introduction part. You can use the same words as the astronauts. You don't have to change those. You can if you want to rewrite that dialogue a little bit, but it should follow the same pattern. It should go back and forth between the 2 speakers just like the original one does. Okay? Now, obviously with your lyrics, you'll be using music. You've got some of those files that I sent you, or you can make your own music, or you could even do it a cappella if you want to. You've got all of that, all of those files, all of those resources that I sent to you last week. And then the other thing, of course, that you need to do is create visual aids. And you saw this in the examples that I showed you. You could do anything from basic PowerPoint slides that follow along with your lyrics, with the words on them, or some groups created actual videos, uh, an animated presentation where everything was recorded together. So that's really up to you how you want to do that. Okay, but I just want to give you some ideas, some advice, some examples of things to do on your visual aids today. One of the main things on visual aids is that they need to be very clear. You need to have good images. Okay, now, who is this guy? Of course, I'm sure you recognize Donald Trump, the current president of the United States. And I want to use a couple of images here from his campaign back in 2016. Now, this is not political. I'm just showing you, I just want to use the images here to illustrate some things in regards to the visual aids. Now, if you look at this poster, his campaign slogan, you may have heard, was "Make America Great Again." Okay, and I want you to focus on the sharpness, the clearness of this image, and that's really easy to see up here around the stars and like where his fingers are. Um, just pay attention to the sharpness, the focus of this image. Okay, and this image that I downloaded from the internet, the image size was 1200 by 659. And that is talking about the pixels. The pixels are basically the number of dots that make up the picture. The more pixels you have, the sharper, the larger, the sharper the image will be. So this is 1200 by 659, and that's a large image size. That's a pretty large file size. Now, For a lot of images on the internet, you can find the same image in different sizes, basically different quality, or uh, different size of image. For example, this one, Make America Great Again, this poster, I also found a smaller image of that, which was 480 by 360 pixels. And again, that looks pretty good. It's clear enough, it's sharp enough to read, but let me move that down to the bottom of the screen here, and then I'm going to stretch it to make it as big as the previous image. So basically what I'm doing here, I'm taking these two corners and stretching them, moving them up to the top corners, and this is the image I end up with. So this is the original here in the middle, and then I've stretched it, I've grabbed the corners and made it bigger. So this is what it looks like. If I start with that original 480 by 360 and expand it, stretch it, this is what I end up with. And notice how blurry this is around his fingers and around even the large text here. It's just not very sharp. And you can really see it here on the stars, how out of focus it is. So let me go to the original again. This is the 1200 by 659, the much larger image. Look how sharp this is. Now the smaller image down below, the 480 by 360. Compare how clear this is compared to this one. So the idea is, if you can start with a larger image, a sharper image at the very beginning, then once you make it big enough for everybody to see on a PowerPoint slide or in your video, you want something that when you enlarge it, when you make it bigger, that it will still look sharp and clear. And so you can see, obviously, the one on the bottom here does not. So you want to use this larger image, as large as you can find. Let's take a look at another example here. This is the logo for Coca-Cola. And this is a pretty small one. It's just 200 by 200. So it's a pretty small one. If I enlarge that, if I stretch it out, you can see here it's still readable, but it's just not very sharp. The lines are not sharp and clear. But if I start with a much larger image, this is 800 by 568, look how sharp that is. Now compare that again to, let me back up, compare that to the 200 by 200 that was enlarged, and now the 800 by 568. Look how much sharper and clearer that is. And even this one, I can stretch it out, I can make it even bigger, and it's still really, really sharp. It's still very high image quality. So the bigger, better, sharper, more clear image you can start with, the better. You're going to have a sharper image. Here's another example. This is from the Pyeongchang Olympics. And again, this looks fine. This is 300 by 299, 300 by 300, basically. If I expand that, if I make it bigger, again, you can still read it, but you can start to see here around the images, around the edges, it's just not as sharp. Now, this image, the original size was 708 by 706. So the other was about 300 by 300. This is 700 by 700. Now, let me go back to the other one. 300, 700. Focus on these lines here, or on the wording here. 300, and even the Olympic rings. 700. Look how much sharper and clearer this is. And again, I can blow that up even bigger, and you still have nice, clear, sharp lines. That's the 300. That's the 700. Much sharper. 300. You can see here the image is not that sharp anymore. The lines are not crisp. 700, much sharper, clearer, more distinct lines. Now, will you always be able to find a large image size for what you're looking for? No. Sometimes you can't find exactly what you want. So sometimes you may need to change your image, look for something a little bit different. Or what I do a lot of times is I just create my own. A lot of the pictures, a lot of the images that you see me using in class, some of them, of course, I have found on the internet, some I have downloaded, but others a lot of the ones I use are actual pictures that I have taken myself, and I use those in my presentations. So if you can't find what you want, if you can't find what you need, you may want to take your own images so that you have a good, clear image. The other thing I want to talk about is text size and style. On most of my slides for the title, for the heading, I like to use this font. It's called Arial Black. Arial is a regular font, a regular text font. The Arial Black is a thicker, bolder font. So it's really good for titles. And I normally use this size 44. Okay. And you can see for the titles here that shows up well and is nice and clear. For most of my text on the slides, I like to use Century Gothic. It's a very clear, sharp, easy to read font. It's very easy to see, very clear. And I try to use size 36. That's the normal size. If I have a slide that has more bullet points or one that has more text, I might go to size 32, possibly even down to size 28. I try not to go any smaller than that, just because if I do, it becomes too difficult for the audience to read. You can see if you get down here to 24, 20, 18, 14, 10, 8, that's really tiny. And that's just going to be impossible for the audience to read, especially if you're in a classroom or a lecture room and the audience is far away. It's going to be very, very difficult for them to see that. Now, right now, since we're doing it online, when it's on the computer screen, everybody's close, it might not be such an issue, but still, if you write it really small, it's just much more difficult to read and it doesn't look as good. I've put a few other fonts on here. This brush script, Gigi, it's kind of cute. It's pretty. It might be nice for a title on a poster or something, but for a PowerPoint slide, it's just really hard to read. And this Lucida handwriting, it looks like a handwritten font. Again, it's kind of pretty, but it's going to make it more difficult for your audience to read and follow what you have written. So for PowerPoint slides, I would avoid these. Stick with something basic and clear. Arial, or for the titles, Arial Black, Century Gothic, those are pretty standard fonts that are very easy to read. And you want to keep using a larger font size. These are some slides I've taken out of another textbook. And they ask a question here. They say, why do presenters make their presentations an eye exam? For those sitting in the back of the audience, it's like when you're at the eye doctor and they have the chart with the E at whatever, I don't know what they use in Korean. Um, but in English, they always have a large E at the top in the center and then smaller and smaller letters as you go down. And your PowerPoint slides should not be like that. It should not be a test. It should not be like an eye exam. Pardon me. It should not be like an eye exam for people in the back of the room squinting and trying and struggling to read what you have written. So make sure the text is large enough to read. This book recommends using a 30-point font. As I said, I try to use 36 if I can, or at least 32. 28 at the absolute. That would be the very smallest I would ever use. So I would say 30 or preferably bigger, like a size 36 point font. They ask another question. Why do people insist on filling all of the space with text? Using fewer words is more effective, meaningful, and powerful. Also, less text is easier to follow and understand. Use few words. Okay. On the left, don't do this. Use few words. This is like we talked about with your cue cards. You only want to use keywords. On your PowerPoint slides, you do not want complete sentences or paragraphs. You don't want long, large amounts of text. Now, on your Boom Diata presentations, you can have the full text, like one line at a time. I love big bridges. You can have like one line altogether. That's fine. Okay. But you don't want um, full paragraphs or the entire verse on the screen at the same time. Too much color is distracting. Avoid using too many colors and colors that do not work well together. Notice here, every word is in a different color. It just looks kind of crazy. And on some of these, you don't end up with high contrast in the colors. So it's a little difficult to read. So you want basic colors. You want colors with high contrast. Black and white, that's very high contrast. Or the black on a light colored background. That works well. Did anyone notice my mistakes? Yes, they will. Notice mistakes. Typos. A typo means a typographical error. A typographical error is a typing mistake. Typos and misspelled words are obvious to the audience. The audience will see those very quickly. I showed you a couple of those when I was showing you some of the examples of Boom Diata presentations, where they should have written like a grass plot, but they instead wrote glass, okay? Or words, or where they misspelled words. Check your spelling. Make sure that you have spelled everything correctly. I've even seen presentations where students misspelled their own names or my name. My name is very simple to spell. Please spell it correctly if you're going to use it on a paper, on a PowerPoint slide, or anywhere. Okay, let me show you a few examples here. A couple of these are from newspapers, so that's why you can see the quality here is not great. But here they ask a question. What should cost less? A gallon of gas or a gallon of milk? In case you don't know, a gallon is about 3.8 liters. Okay. In the US, I don't know why that turned red. In the US, when we buy gasoline, gasoline, fuel for our cars, or we buy milk or water or juice, a lot of times it is sold in gallons. A gallon is about 3.8 liters. Now, we also buy milk or juice in smaller quantities, half gallon or a quart. A quart is a quarter of a gallon. So a quart is about 1 liter. Okay, it's a liter is a little bit bigger than a quart. Okay, 1 liter is a little bit larger than a quart. Not much, but a little bit. Because there are 4 quarts in a gallon. So 4 quarts is 3.8 liters. So the liters are a little bit larger. So the question here, though, is which should cost less, a gallon of gas or a gallon of milk? What do you think? Well, A lot of people would say, oh, well, definitely a gallon of milk because that's necessary. That's food. That's something we drink. We put it on cereal. We use it for cooking. Children drink it. So milk should definitely be cheaper, right? Because it's food. And that kind of makes sense. I can see that argument for sure. But think about this. When you buy milk, how much milk do you buy? How often do you buy it? When you buy milk in Korea, often it's just sold in a 1 liter or 2 liter bottle. How much milk do you buy every week? 1 or 2 liters? But when you buy gasoline, when you put gas in your car, how much gasoline do you buy? A lot, right? You might put what? Uh, how many liters would you put? Um, 30 or 40 liters at a time. More than that, maybe. So you're buying a lot more gasoline all at once. So now, which one do you want to be cheaper? Gasoline or milk? So I would say, for me, gasoline, because I buy a lot more gas than I buy milk. Now, notice the answers here, though. What should cost less? A gallon of gas or a gallon of milk? Yes, 43%. No, 57%. Can you answer this question with yes or no? No. These don't make any sense. So, what should cost less? Here they could write gas and milk, or milk and gas. I don't know which way these answers went. Or they could change the question. They could say, should a gallon of gas cost less than a gallon of milk? Oh, should it cost less? Then you could answer yes or no. So this whole graphic doesn't make any sense at all. So when you're using visual aids, when you're using graphs or charts, tables, make sure that they are logical, that they make sense. Here's another one from this is a British newspaper in the UK, a weekly poll. We asked, would you pay more for your milk to help dairy farmers? Dairy farmers are the farmers that produce milk, butter, cheese, ice cream. Okay, those are all dairy products. So the dairy farmers have the cows that produce milk. Would you pay more for your milk? Yes, 87%. No, 13%. Okay, but notice that the graph here, the pie chart is divided equally in half, not into 87 and 13%. Okay, so again, the image here is incorrect. And also, um, the contrast here, the color contrast, the kind of the dark blue um, and the black, that shows up well on the white. And then on the green or the blue background, we have the white no. That shows up very well. That's kind of the opposite of this. But the 13% is very hard to read because you have a dark font, dark letters on a dark background. So this is very difficult to read. You need high contrast between the background and the text so that it's very easy to read. Here's a more recent example of that I have seen on TV recently. This is Governor Cuomo, Governor Andrew Cuomo. He is the governor of the state of New York. Now, New York, there's New York City, and then there is New York State, which is much bigger than the city. So the city is actually New York, New York, New York City in New York State. And he's been doing a lot of press conferences in regards to the coronavirus pandemic and using PowerPoint slides basically to go along with those. So, um, and notice here we have yellow with white on it. That's not real high contrast. It's a little hard to see, especially down here at the bottom. They have white text inside the yellow boxes here and here and here. Can you read it? On my TV, it's really difficult to see. This image from the internet is a little sharper, but it's still a little hard to read. It says stay home, stop the spread, save lives. Stay home, stop the spread, save lives. Which is a great message. It's just that it's hard to read. Okay. Here's another image of that with one of his charts. Again, the white on the blue background, that works okay. Socially distanced, spiritually connected. Korea's been talking a lot about this social distancing, keeping about 2 meters away from other people to help stop the spread of the virus. And that's what they're saying here. Stay home, stop the spread, save lives. This is actually much sharper than it looks on my television at home. But even now that it's sharp, it's still a little difficult to see because you have white on yellow. So you don't have a very high contrast. You don't have a lot of difference between the background and the color. So it's not very easy to read. So avoid things like that. This is another one. They're talking about medical staff. This is a large image, but it's not very sharp, not very clear. But here they're talking about the healthcare force and type and total. And again, they have sort of a very light blue background on a blue font on a blue background here and here, which just does not show up very well at all. So that's really poor color choice for the headings there. Here's another one with the governor, stay home, stop the spread, save lives. And here they've used a white font on this light blue background. Again, you want higher contrast. This just doesn't show up very well. It just isn't um, effective color choices for what he's trying to do. Here's one that I really like. This is a pie chart, an actual pie chart. Notice the silver part here that shows pie I have eaten. This is the pie that's gone, that percentage. And the yellow part here is pie I have not yet eaten, pie that remains. And so this one is very clear, very easy to see. It's actually a very creative use of a pie chart because they're using an actual pie to make the graph. So I like that one. Okay, that's all I'm going to cover today. Um, just make sure that when you are doing your visuals for your own PowerPoint presentations, make sure that you have large, clear, sharp, in focus, easy to see images so that the audience can clearly see what you are showing. If you can download images that already exist, great. If you need to take your own pictures, your own images, then do that. When you're adding text to your background, make sure you have that high contrast. If you have a light colored background, make sure you have a dark text. If you have a dark background, make sure you have a light colored background. I forget which way I was saying that now. Make sure they're opposite. Okay, if you have a light background, dark text. Dark background, light text, so that the audience can clearly and easily see what you're writing. Okay? All right, guys, that's it for today. Have a good day and good luck on your lyrics. If you have any questions, go ahead and send me a message on Kakao, and I will look forward to getting your full lyrics for each group before class on Thursday. Have a great day.